Agriculture. The science or practice of farming, including cultivation of the soil for the growing of crops and the rearing of animals to provide food, wool, and other products. In the beginning, or at least the beginning of Homo sapien, or humans, it is believed that we were a species of hunter-gatherers, mostly nomadic, moving from place to place in search of food. Some societies traveled vast distances in synchronicity with the change of seasons. Then, around 7000 BC, or about 9,000 years ago, give or take a couple of thousand years, a number of tribes began collecting seeds from grasses and vegetation that were a food source on their nomadic routes and replanted them in regions preferred for year-round dwelling. The idea was that if one could grow, harvest, and store enough food during the local growing season to last throughout the non-growing season, a tribe could build a permanent community and put down roots, so to speak. So that worked for seeds, grains, and grasses, as they could be dried and stored, then ground and cooked to make bread or any number of savory dishes. But what to do about meat? There must have been a eureka moment when they realized that the animals they hunted were for the most part vegetarian and lived on seeds, grains, and grasses, the very seeds, grains, and grasses they already had in storage. This would lead to the domestication of cows, goats, chickens, etc., and the growing of feed for livestock. The plow. From the moment humans conceived of growing food from seed, it became apparent that it would be necessary to cultivate or prepare the soil for planting. Initially, a handheld hoe was used to break up the soil, but this was extremely labor-intensive, especially when trying to cultivate an area large enough to feed an entire city. The plow, invented in what is now India about 5000 BC, was a device designed to be pulled, initially by oxen, that turned the soil and dug furrows in straight lines or rows, allowing for efficient planting. Over a few thousand years, the plow underwent many design changes, and not to mention a spelling change. However, in the early 1700s, the swing plow was invented and emerged as a perfected standard. It is, to this very day, the instrument used at all historical plowing events and competitions. The dawn of dairy. No one really knows when humans conceived of the idea that it might be beneficial to one's health to drink the milk from domesticated mammals. But that development created a huge demand for anything dairy. A myriad of varieties of cheese, ice cream, yogurt, butter, milk chocolate, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. As it would have been unnatural for an adult human to consume milk prior to the domestication of animals, a genetic change must have taken place which allowed them to drink the milk without getting sick. This change has been mapped and dated to dairying farmers who lived around 7,500 years ago in a region between the Central Balkans and Central Europe. The Sterling Connection.
Hello, I'm Roy Bonesteel. I'm standing in Whitehead's restaurant.
We'll assume that you've watched at least some of the movie that's playing in the Welcome Center and hosted by the late iconic broadcaster Roy Bonesteel. And if so, you'll have a pretty good idea regarding the economic and social benefits of the dairy industry in the Quinte region, Sterling in particular. Pretty important, and the reason that we have this amazing museum. And now, with the facts and figures out of the way, we can move on to the fun stuff. The technology of farming today. In other words, computers, robots, and great big machines. Well, that was fun, wasn't it? However, now we need to get serious. In today's fast-paced, technologically advanced global economy, we can get just about whatever we want, whenever we want it. And with the proliferation of product from third world and developing countries and their low wages, well, it's hard to resist the temptation to spend. But there's a problem. In our quest for finding the lowest price on items, we end up importing what we want or need from thousands of miles away. And that includes food that we already grow in our own backyard. If food has to travel thousands of miles, and according to studies, the average is 1,400 miles, it needs to either be picked before it's ripe, refrigerated and artificially ripened, chemically treated or genetically altered to maintain its visual appeal when it arrives at the local supermarket. But consider the fuel costs or the environmental impacts of trucking and transporting so-called fresh produce, canned or frozen goods from thousands of miles away. Our high standard of living in Canada comes at a cost, and our local farmers struggle to compete and survive in this global market. If we lose these farmers, the negative effects will be substantial. Unemployment, more development of our limited prime farmland for housing and industry, and a dependence on the stability of world trade and fossil fuels, to name a few. If you live in Ontario and are buying peaches, pears, or apples in the late summer or fall, consider all of the orchards in places like Niagara-on-the-Lake or Prince Edward County, and the family farmers and their employees who remain committed to growing and harvesting real, fresh, and healthy food and getting it to your local market in season. Okay, now that you're a lot smarter than when you arrived a few minutes ago, and hopefully more environmentally and socially conscious, it's time to see what you came here to see. A ton of cool agricultural and historical stuff that will transport you to a different time and inspire you to bring your friends so that you can impress them with how much you know about agriculture. Thanks for watching. Now, go and be amazed.